which is much lower than what the current prices are. So at this moment, it doesn't seem to be an interesting proposition. If the prices are going up, which they did in the last 12 months, if we had also followed the same policy and sold two-thirds at a particular price, we would be losing money today. I mean, not losing money, we'll be making less money today.
Okay, sir. So is there a way in terms of growing on our realizations, like having better realizations? Can we, or are we looking at shifting completely to, like currently we do 80% UHP. Are we able to shift to 100% UHP and increase our bottom line?
Theoretically, yes. The plant is capable of doing whatever mix we want, but even today, our realization, or let's say not realization, the most important thing is the margin. Our margins are not different between the two grades. So long as the margins are similar, there's no need for us to make any change, and especially because most of the large customers who buy UHP also need to buy non-UHP. So we would not like to vacate that market because this is what the demand is.
Right, understood, sir. So you probably may have the same customer asking for HP and UHP both. And looking at the relationship, you would like to continue that relationship with the customer.
Exactly, and especially if you have been following this industry, we've spoken about it in the past that the other two larger players, the Japanese and the Americans, vacated this market about 10 years ago for the non-UHP because it takes a little bit of more labor to produce these small sizes which are non-UHP. So today, currently, there is very less competition in this particular segment because except the two Indian companies, none of the major international companies are in this market.
Okay. And sir, I basically wanted to understand, do you have any idea of the percentage increase in NC that would be affected once we start finalizing for next year? And whether we have a clear roadmap, because we've got some capacity coming online, that is 20,000 metric tons, and we are running at 85%. So this 15% gap plus the 25% capacity addition, which is coming in, probably would start around 2020 or 2021. Do we have a clear roadmap in terms of NC availability and whether we can actually look at higher 90 utilization going forward and whether we have the availability of NC for projected for the next 2 years or so?
No, you're absolutely right, and that is a question which is very difficult to answer, and we are struggling to find that answer. But if we really live in the real world, our expansion is going to take not less than 2.5 to 3 years, and it's very difficult to assume that any supplier is going to give us or anybody a commitment after 3 years. I mean, obviously 3 years is a very long time. So one will have to take a very, very considered view while taking a decision on expansion, because I don't think anybody will be in a position to make a firm commitment 3 years down the road.
Understood, sir. So in terms of running this business, now this was touted as a 2-year cycle, but now when you look at BML reports and reports from international research houses, this is now seen as a 20-year cycle, and this is going to keep on increasing when people start moving more towards EAF, China in fact. So are we looking at, with our cash reserves that we have, and those are very humongous cash reserves, are we looking at a needle coke joint venture? Because that is where we can look at backward integration, and we would have a committed amount of needle coke for our main business.
I wish we could do that. I wish you were right. But the issue is it's a technology-oriented industry, and the technology is in the hands of very few customers, very few suppliers. And I don't think anybody is willing to give this know-how to any outsider now. Just as we are not willing to give our know-how to somebody, it's the same thing with our suppliers.
Understood, sir. Thank you very much, and congratulations once again to yourself and all the employees of HEG and all the investors as well. It was a great quarter, and the next quarter, I know with the additional utilization that you have talked about, would be great as well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Karan Thakkar from PM Securities. Please go ahead.
Hi, very good afternoon. I just have a small question on I want to understand how would the needle coke recognition of COGS work. So as I understand, it's about a 5-6 month cycle from the time that the needle coke is ordered for and it's utilized on the facility. So if we want to account for COGS, is it fair to believe that needle coke, which has which was bought in the previous quarter, at the start of previous quarter, if we are tracking the prices, then would that be the price which will be accounted for the COGS in the next quarter?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the quickest cycle, let's say for the easiest product, is about 6 to 7 weeks.
Okay.
And for some of the most difficult ones, it can be as much as about 5 months or so.
Okay.
So given this long cycle, obviously, and given that the entire needle coke is imported, so obviously there itself you need about 2.5 months to order and to ship and to get it, and then there is the cycle of processing.
Right.
So you are absolutely right. I mean, what we are using currently was obviously shipped about 3-4 months ago, and it will be the same thing going forward.
Okay, 3 to 4 months back. And you mentioned about the power cost reduction because you shifted to state power instead of the internal power. So say per unit or say on an overall basis, how much would be the saving this quarter onwards?
So the saving is already reflected. I mean, the whole of last quarter or a large part of the last quarter.
Oh, okay.
If you followed what we just said, basically because Madhya Pradesh Electricity Board is surplus of power,
right.
And so they negotiated this kind of a deal with some of the large companies who have their own captive power.
Okay.
So it made sense on both the sides to stop the captive power plants, which are obviously much more expensive compared to what we could get from Electricity Board.
Okay. Understood. And we do have some sort of linkage in terms of employee costs to the profitability. So with increasing profitability, we tend to pay a little more in terms of salaries or bonuses. So could you explain to us how do we see this in in the ongoing profitability? Is there any policy that how much employee costs would take a expansion in the quarters to come?
See, there is definitely a performance-based salary which the company works on. So, if the performance of the employee is good, as well as if the performance of the company is good, we definitely have a higher cost which is given as an incentive over a period of 6 months.
Okay, and that is there any percentage of profitability or on a company macro level, we cannot look at it like that, right?
See, it cannot be defined as a percentage of the profitability. It is defined generally as a percentage of the employee cost.
Okay. So, could we expect it to remain how it has been in this quarter, or would it can we further see an expansion?
I don't think so. See, the one thing that we have already shared is if we compare 17-18 with 18-19, the biggest increase in employee cost is on account of the contractual terms salary payable to the chairman of the company. So, and over and above that, there is something called an employee incentive scheme, which is payable to employees based on the performance of the company each year.
Okay.
Now, that incentive could be paid once in a year, could be paid twice in a year. There is no policy, but yes, we decide, as and when the year progresses.
Okay, and how much incentive in percentage also you decide as and when the year progresses, right? There is no policy on that.
There is no policy on that.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. That's about it. Thank you so much, Mr. Rastogi and Agarwal.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Anubhav Sahu from MC Research. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. Couple of questions I have. One is, compared to 6 months back or 1 year back, it looks like the product prices are stabilizing now. Does it also mean that the contract cycle, which had earlier shrunk from the annualized basis to quarterly, is now improving, or is there any change in that the nature of contract cycle now?
So there's no major change. I mean, as we had discussed in the past calls, it's quarterly to half yearly.
Okay. So, So when you say that next 4 to 5 weeks you will get visibility about January quarter, it's mainly that the quarterly contract cycle will get far more visibility by the end of this month.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And so, given your capacity utilization guidance, it looks like the needle coke availability has improved for the company. Do you see industry-wide also there is a bit of improvement, even if we take out the bottlenecking steps taken by Phillips 66? In general also, is there a bit of improvement in needle coke availability for the industry?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, obviously, whatever is that tonnage which has been debottlenecked, it's all being distributed between all the 5-6 players. So I guess everybody is getting a little more coke and subsequently a little better capacity utilization.
Okay. And so for the needle coke also, I'm assuming that the same contract cycle in tandem is happening the way it is happening for the graphite electrodes in a quarterly or half-yearly nature?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's all from my side. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ketan Sarana, an independent analyst. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hello sir. Hello Mr. Esturi. Great results. Actually, sir, I had a couple of questions. One was like the problem of Graphite India regarding the pollution board. Do we face the same problem regarding HEG plant as well?
We do not see any such problem in our plant. This problem of Graphite India is unique to the city of Bangalore, and I can only say that the graphite industry is working in countries like United States of America as well as Germany. So this industry knows very well how to meet the requirement of the pollution, etc. But if it was dedicated to a specific incident in Bangalore, we are not in Bangalore. So we are not in the same sync as the Graphite India's Bangalore plant is.
Yeah, and my other question was, sir, what's the order pipeline as of now?
Can you repeat that last question?
Yeah, what is the order pipeline as of now?
You see, as I had answered this in one of the previous questions, I mean, just like needle coke, we are operating on a quarterly to a maximum of 6 monthly contracts.
Okay. And so my other question was, what was the debt which HEG has cleared right now? It has completed audit, right? So I just need to have the figures.
No, we have zero debt in our books. Zero.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Arvind Sharma, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Congratulations for the good quarter. For the plans, I would just like to question one small business area. For example, there were some rumors that, you might be also planning to move into the anode manufacturing space or maybe contribute something there in the lithium-ion battery manufacturing. Because graphite is one of the raw materials which obviously has an application there. And I don't know whether the residue which is, there after creating that UHP, that can be used or supplied to those who are manufacturing anodes.
Yeah, you're right. We are looking at this very seriously.
Okay, so that is on the plans, right? I mean, I know it is very difficult to reveal as now. Those kind of plans because they need quite a lot of planning. But is it on the management radar? I just wanted to know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly on the radar and it's on the table.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of LP Soni, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Congratulations, sir, for the robust performance. And during this half year one, the EPS has been 415 rupees, against which you have declared the dividend of 30 rupees. So, in the various statements you are saying you are maintaining the dividend payout ratio of 35%. So what is so sacrosanct about this 35% dividend payout ratio? Reason is that in current half year as well as earlier period, now you are earning huge abnormal profit, which is contributed mainly by the huge price rise of the graphite electrodes, which was not there earlier. Even the earlier years, if you go through in 14-15, financial year 14-15, dividend payout ratio including dividend distribution tax was 50%, which now you are reducing to 35%. So I want to know what is the sacrosanctity of this dividend payout of 35%.
No, there is no sacrosanctity on that, but our finance guy is just looking at the figures as you speak. And I don't think it was 50% in 14-15. Our ratio has always been in the region of 33, 34, 35%. And to take up your question for the second part, I mean, as I said, there is no sacrosanctity, but the percentage is a percentage. And obviously, when the going is good and you're making larger profits than in the past, you also have capex, you also have expansions, you also have diversifications, which we are now able to look at, which we were not able to look at 3 years ago. So, given all these things, I think 1/3 or 35% of the payout ratio is amongst the best in the industry. I mean, one would like to preserve cash for every other thing, which is expansion of the existing plant, going into a diversification, which I said, we are looking at something very seriously on the batteries. So basically, that is it. I mean, we're trying to conserve cash for all our future requirements.
Sir, what you are saying is right, but you see the present cash balance or bank balance is about 700 crores, which will go up to maybe 2,500 crores or 3,000 crores. What you will do with this cash? Because the expansion plan which you are spelling out, it will cost, you have indicated in earlier Concall, it will cost almost $100 million, almost 700 crore rupees, spread over 2-3 years. And another thing, sir, is that this huge abnormal profit is the gift of the God. You see, it is a sudden rise in the profit, which is not contributed by the management or by anything. Like I would say in Hindi, Bhagwan ne chhappar phad ke diya hai. So you are maintaining still a small amount, giving small amount to the shareholders and retaining bulk part of it, which I cannot understand. So this gift of the God should be distributed amongst all the shareholders, and it should be higher. Dividend payout ratio of 35% was all right when your, say, financial 14-15 EPS was 6.76. In financial year 13-14, EPS was 21.68. So in financial year 14-15, when the EPS was 6.76, you have given a dividend of 3. By including the dividend distribution tax, the payout ratio comes out to be 50%. So in the lean period, you have given the 50%, and the time is good. You are giving only 35% payout.
So on this specific percentage that you're talking about, 14-15, I'll pass this to our finance person, and he's looking at the 14-15 data, and it is about 35-36%. It is not 50.
Sir, these are the balance sheet data.
Anyway, we can...
state or you state, it will remain the same.
No, but probably there is some confusion in calculation. What I'll suggest is that if you can give us your number or something, so he can call you and clarify how he has calculated. Secondly, you see, you said Bhagwan ne chappar vaar ke diya hai, but percentage of 100 or percentage of 1,000, the bottom line is very different. I mean, so what we as a shareholder are all getting today is 35% of 1,000 compared to 35% of 100. I mean, that is why the board is for. I mean, our board, I believe, is a very, very financially very sound board. They understand everything, and that we think that preserving this money for any future acquisition, for any expansion of the graphite plant, is much more important than giving 35%, more than 35-40% now. Maybe if this continues for a couple of more years, if we are lucky and we can maintain these kinds of profits for the next 2-3 years, then yes, what your question is very, very valid. But at that stage, one will have to solve this problem, which is a very, very good problem to solve.
Okay, I'll live with this. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Devang Sanghi from ICICI Direct. Please go ahead. Devang Sanghi, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead with your question. As there's no response from the current participant, we move to the next question. That's from the line of Manoj Kulchandani, an initial investor. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Congratulations on the fantastic result.
Thank you.
I'm actually here on behalf of 1,400 investors in HEG. We have a big group, and we actually had a whole list of questions to ask you, but I think the majority of them have been asked by all the analysts. I still have a few queries. I mean, it's basically, if you look at the international GE manufacturers, okay, all of them have introduced a needle coke surcharge in their sale contracts. So basically, when the needle coke goes over a certain price, I mean, the sale contract is increased by a certain amount. So is HEG also looking to implement a similar thing, or do you have that in place already?
I don't think your information is correct. As far as the international players are concerned, there is one international player in America,
right,
who has done a 5-year take or pay contract for about 2/3 of their production for 5 years.
Okay.
And there is no connection with the needle coke in this particular case, and it is simply because this is the only graphite producer who has a backup of the needle coke. They have their own captive needle coke facility.
Right.
So for them to be able to do this 5-year kind of a contract is very simple, because they have their own coke, as I said.
Okay.
And the raw material for that coke happens to be oil,
okay,
which in America can be hedged for the next 3, 4, 5 years. So our understanding is this, that they have hedged their oil for the next 5 years, which means their cost of needle coke is to a very large extent frozen. So they are in a very good situation because they have their own raw material. They have hedged it for 5 years. So they could have gone in the market and sold about 2/3, as I said. But for the rest of the others, which includes all the 3, 4 Japanese and the 2 Indian companies who are buying needle coke from the market, it's not easy to go and do these 5-year kind of contracts. And I don't think your information that all others have linked to the electrode prices to the needle coke price. At least.
No, we were reading about Showa Denko actually. We were reading about Showa Denko actually implementing this thing in their next contracts, sale contracts. So I'll actually research some more on it and get back to you. And besides this, there's another query about the extent and nature of concentration of the major customers. I mean, for instance, it is learned that Iranian clients account for a large space. So will these be affected by the U.S. sanctions? And if yes, in case a full exemption is not granted from the sanctions, how does that pose a problem to HEG?
So first of all, it's not very large. I mean, it is large. Of course, Iran is a very large country with a very large steel production, and luckily Iran produces 100% of their steel through electric arc furnaces where electrodes are used. So it is a large customer, and over the last, let's say, 3, 4 years, 5 years, for whatever reasons, the Americans and the Japanese have refrained from selling electrodes to Iran, and India has taken a very major chunk. So you are right, it is a large contributor to the Indian exports, but it is not extremely large so as to affect the bottom line or to find an alternate market for this, because the market is strong. But luckily, I mean, you have yourself suggested, and we are all aware whatever is happening and whatever has appeared in the press in the last 2-3 days. Luckily, it seems that India is not being included in that list anymore. So we are still waiting for a formal notification from America. So if that is coming, and if in the next day or two we get this formal notification where India is excluded out of the sanction, so it's a positive for us. I mean, we will be back on track and we'll continue to have whatever sales we were doing to Iran.
All right. And also, do you have a forex hedging policy in place? I mean, it's basically the needle coke contracts which are coming in. I believe the sale is actually hedging the NC coming in. But besides that, is there any other fixed policy in place to handle the volatility? I mean, right now it has gone in favor of the company. We've actually made a good amount of money. But in the future, is there any policy in place?
Yes, see, there is definitely a policy on hedging of foreign currency in the country. So before giving a brief on the policy, the two basic fundamentals that we have to understand in HEG exports about 2/3 of its total turnover to countries outside India.
Right.
There is a dollar earning on that front, and on the import front, the price of raw material and the total value of raw material that we see is 1/5 of the total sale value of export. So
okay.
if we consider both the facts, we are a net exporting company, so we always have dollars which are available for sale.
Okay.
So in this context, the hedging policy of the company is to keep 30% open and 70% net of the import is to be covered. That is what we follow as a policy as well as practice on ground.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vivek Chirag, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Hello. Hi, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to understand, would you now say the balance of risks as far as the pricing of electrodes is concerned is on the downside? I mean, we've come from about $3,000 per ton to $15,000 per ton. And the demand supply must be almost equal right now. So, I mean, what are the risks on either side for a sharp swing in the prices?
Can you repeat your question? Was not very clear.
I'm saying, would you now say that the balance of risk as far as the prices of electrodes is concerned is on the downside, or is it fairly stable? I mean, would you expect a wild swing of, say, $3,000 to $4,000 per ton? I mean, what are the factors that can take the prices up or down from the current levels? I mean, the market seems to have stabilized right now.
Okay. No. Currently, I would say the market is very well stabilized. I mean, we haven't seen any change in the last 3-4 quarters. And talking about what could lead to the pricing going back to $3,000-4,000 is simple. The only reason why we are seeing what is happening in the market is because China has closed about 120 to 150 million tons of blast furnaces which are highly polluting. And with that, China's ability to export steel has come down substantially. And to that extent, about 40 to 50 million tons of additional steel is now being manufactured by the rest of the world because Chinese exports have come down to that extent. And that's where about 50% of the steel is being produced through electric arc furnace. So that has led to demand-supply mismatch. And as I said in my opening remarks, about 15 to 20% of the electrode capacity was shut down between 2013 and 15. So the risk, if you are talking about of the market going back to where they were 2 years ago, is only that if China disregards the pollution, and they again restart their 150 million tons of closed capacity, which doesn't seem practical because the plants that they've closed over the last 18-20 months, in lots of these places, these plants have been actually razed to the ground, and the land is being used for something else.
Okay. And sir, as the ex-China UHP market, as I understand, is about 800,000 tons a year, and you're saying that the demand is growing at 7 to 8% per year. Do you think in the next 2 years there might...
Excuse me, this is the operator. Mr. Chirag, your voice is breaking up a lot. Can you please check?
Yes. Hi, sir. Can you hear me now?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, sir, I was suggesting, as you said, that ex-China, the UHP, the market is about 800,000 tons per year, and that is growing at about 7 to 8%. Is there a scenario in which in the next 2 years the market becomes tight again? There's not much supply coming in, and even if the utilization levels go up, would you say there's any chance of the market becoming very short again, which might lead to a bump up in the prices? Or is that like a very long shot?
No. First of all, we never mentioned this figure of 800. This is not the right number. It is lower than that.
Okay.
And secondly, yes, we talked about a sharp increase in the electric arc furnace to the extent of 8 to 9%. But this happened over the last 18 to 20 months because of this sudden increase in the steel production in the world outside of China. And we are, even if we assume a more reasonable kind of a 3 to 4% growth and not 8 to 9%, even then you need about 25 to 30,000 tons of more electrodes per annum. If the world growth was happening at the rate of 3 to 4%, and the steel growth follows the GDP of 3 to 4%, then you will need somewhere between 20 to 30,000 tons of additional electrode. And as I responded to one of the question, it's a highly concentrated industry. The technology is very scarce, and the time taken for a brownfield expansion is also somewhere close to 2.5 to 3 years. So we don't see much happening in the graphite industry, so to speak. In spite of the last 18-20 months of shortages, we haven't seen any major plans of either greenfield or a brownfield expansion by anybody because simply it takes too long.
Okay, sir. That's it from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Suraj Singh Thakur, an individual investor. Please go ahead. Suraj Singh Thakur, your line is...
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask about the needle coke requirements. Is it required for only UHP or HP grade also?
Only UHP.
Only UHP. Okay, sir. Then what are the chances that some Chinese player may increase the HP grade quantity, and by that amount our UHP requirement will be decreased?
No, the Chinese, the UHP, HP electrodes cannot be used by people who need UHP. These are two very different products for two different purposes with two different kinds of furnaces. So China, by producing more of HP, cannot make any impact on the demand of UHP.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This was the last question. With this, I now hand the conference over to the management for their closing comments. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, friends, and thank you for taking so much of interest in our industry, and thank you for investing your time and money in this company. And I look forward to speaking to you once again in 3 months' time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good afternoon and welcome to our Q2 financial year 2019 Concall. In line with the first quarter results, HEG's second quarter performance continues to be strong, supported by robust global market conditions, global steel sector growth, pricing and demand of graphite electrodes. China's efforts to reduce overcapacity and pollution in domestic pollutant industries continue with more rigid and strict restrictions. This year, China has extended the duration of production cuts for the steel industry during the winter season by 2 months, starting 1st October and ending 31st of March, a total of 180 days, as compared to production cuts from 15th November to 15th March last winters, which was a total of 120 days. This year, their major target is 28 main cities to implement this production cap because they are key steel making bases in the country, accounting for over 40% of their total production. Production cuts in this region is likely to vary between 30 to 70%. The steel exports from China continue to come down, and they have come down by about 11% in the first 9 months of the current year, which is an annualized figure of about 70 million tons. We believe the electric arc furnace segment in the world, excluding China, continues to grow at a level of about 8 to 9% after remaining stagnant for past 7 to 8 years, leading to additional steel production in the region outside China by about 30 to 40 million tons of steel through electric arc furnace, and corresponding increase in the demand for graphite electrodes at a time when 15 to 20% of electrode capacities were shut down between 2013 and 2016. Due to environmental reasons, China continues to focus on moving large part of their steel production to electric arc furnaces. In 2016, the electric arc furnace segment in China accounted for just 6% of their total steel. This went up to 9% in 2017, and this is likely to surge to around 12% in the current year, 2018. In real numbers, this means approximately 50 million tons in 16, increasing to 75 million in 17, and further 100 million tons in 18, doubling from 50 million tons to 100 million tons in less than 2 years. This obviously means a substantial increase in the demand for electrodes within China, which is what we are seeing in the electrodes production data there. Going forward, China seems to be on track to achieve their announced target of reaching about 20% steel production by 2020 through electric arc furnaces, a more than threefold increase, which would mean going up from 50 million tons in 2016 to more than 160 million tons by 2020. A whopping increase of approximately 110 million tons, which, to put it into perspective, is as much as what we currently produce in India. This augurs well for our industry with strong entry barriers and long lead times for any expansions. Coming to our own country, Indian steel industry has fared very well. The first 9 months this year, production has grown by about 6.1% year on year. Domestic steel as well as electrode demand remains healthy in this quarter. Friends, we are all seeing a very major consolidation happening in the steel industry, with lots of financially stressed assets being acquired by some of the stronger steel companies. In the next couple of years, the Indian steel industry will be dominated by 4 to 5 large producers, increasing the productivity and efficiencies. Ramp-up of production at hitherto underutilized steel plants after merger with these larger companies will obviously generate additional demand for graphite electrodes within the country. Needle coke continues to be a cause of concern, and with demand of electrodes on the rise, we hope that some of the needle coke companies will also raise their capacities in the near future. HEG is now a debt-free company with both long-term and short-term, and currently we have a net cash of about 700 crores in our treasury as of 30th September. We continue to seriously evaluate debottlenecking of our plant from its current level of 80,000 tons to about 100,000 tons, and we are working with a very well-known consulting company. This issue is receiving our highest attention, and I hope to give you some more specific information fairly soon. We have a history of maintaining a payout ratio of around 35%, and we do expect to maintain the same in the current year as well. In line with that, as you're aware, the company's board has already approved an interim dividend of 300%, which should be received by the shareholders by about 20th of November. With this, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you, all other investors, bankers, our employees, our customers and suppliers who have stood with us. With this, I would now hand over the floor to our CEO cum CFO, Mr. Rastogi, to take you through all the financial numbers, and then we'll be very happy to answer all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. For the quarter ended September 2018, HEG recorded net operating income of 1794 crores as against 1587 crores in the previous quarter, a jump of nearly 13% quarter-on-quarter and nearly 337% year-on-year for the same period last year. EBITDA, including other income, which stood at 1197 crores in the previous quarter, has increased to 1389 crores, an increase of nearly 16% quarter-on-quarter and 623% year-on-year for the same period. Company reported a net profit of 889 crore in Q2 as against profit of 770 crore in the previous quarter. The company has already crossed its annual turnover of financial year 18 as we report today. Since turnover is a factor of both volume and prices, we are happy to inform that company has been able to achieve a healthy growth in both the aspects. Your company's capacity utilization is progressively going higher, and that has been made possible with the availability of higher needle coke in the quarter under reference. Corresponding to the increasing trend of sale prices in the recent past, we are also witnessing a sharp increase in the prices of almost all primary raw materials. But we have been able to not only maintain the previous level of margins, but improve them. Net sales and also the segment results in power segment are lower in Q2 as we have been able to negotiate a mutually beneficial term with the government utility company and replace part of the high-cost self-generated power, which is thermal, with the power purchased from State Electricity Board. This step has not only reduced the volume of captive generation and transfer to graphite, but also reduced the average realization in power segment, as the revenue in power segment is booked based on corresponding rate of power as defined by the state-run utilities. Besides, our hydro facilities, which generally start operation towards end of Q2, has actually commenced operation in the later half of October 2018, primarily due to shortfall of rain in the state of Madhya Pradesh this year, and particularly in the catchment where our plant is located. While this step has reduced revenue and bottom line in the power segment, it has had a very favorable impact on the overall power cost of graphite electrode making. The increase in annual employee benefit expense over financial year 18 is primarily on account of provisioning of profit-related commission payable to the chairman of the company at the rate of 2.5% under contractual terms of his appointment. Increase in absolute value of power and fuel over Q1 FY19 is attributable to increased level of production and also substantial increase in international crude oil prices. Your company has been handling treasury operations to the tune of nearly 700 to 800 crores, and the average return has been around 8% per annum on the same. With this background, I would request questions which we can clarify more.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and one on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Thank you. The first question is from the line of Abhisar Jain from Centrum Broking. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir, and congrats for another record performance in this quarter. Sir, my question is, we are seeing some increase in the inventory in your P&L, almost a 200 crore entry is there in this quarter. So is it related to more of the finished goods? And if at all, you can quantify the quantity, please?
Good afternoon, Abhisar. You are right. There is an increase in inventory, and primarily it is on account of finished goods. And the increase is on account of the last days BL, which were not, received by us for export sale. So in HEG, the export sale is booked based on receipt of BL on the cut-off date. So this was a quarter where almost like 1,000 metric tons of material was lying at Mumbai, but because of congestion, we could not clear them under the bill of lading, and so they were not booked as sale and added to inventory in the quarter 2.
Sure, sir, understood. And sir, for this quarter, as you mentioned, the capacity utilization were around 85%, and we can assume that the shipment would be slightly lower than that based on just the commentary that you just gave.
You are right, Abhisar.
Okay. And so the other question is on the needle coke visibility. So as you have indicated earlier that Phillips 66 is doing some debottlenecking, wherein a total of 50 KT is supposedly going to be distributed among the industry. So if you could throw some light on the status of the same and at what stage that thing is.
We believe this has happened, and we've started getting a little more needle coke because of that.
Understood. And so, sir, so based on that extra visibility of the supply, what kind of utilization can we expect in H2 and going into FY20?
See, as I had said in some of these interviews in the press, we expect this quarter and the next quarter to be close to 90%.
Mm-hmm. Right, sir. And sir, a little bit going forward into FY20, with this increased supply, can we think of something 90 plus?
I hope so. We are still under negotiations with all the suppliers for next year. And my guess is in the next 4 to 5 weeks, we should be in a position to know the volume of coke that we can get from different sources.
Sure, sir. And so the other question is now on the electrode market itself. So, I believe that in the needle coke contracts, the 6 monthly contracts have already starting seeing some increase in H2, and there might be some more increase going into CY19. But has the electrode prices also, still witnessing an equal or a higher increase, or are you seeing some signs of stabilization, at least at the electrode level? Because the steel price also seems to have stabilized more or less at the global level now.
See, on needle coke, as I said, we have no idea. I mean, in the next 4 or 5 weeks, we will know what kind of pricing, what kind of quantities that we are talking about. As far as electrode is concerned, at least on the UHP side, we don't see anything softening. And to the best of our information, the other international players are talking about a further increase based on the assumption that you just made that probably needle coke prices are going to go up. So it's too early. I mean, we'll have to wait for another 4 to 6 weeks to see what is happening.
Right, sir. But just from the H2 point of view, sir, there would be a little bit of a higher needle cost which will come into the system per se versus H1, whereas the electrode, there might not be that much increase. Is that understanding correct?
I'm not sure about the second part, but the first part, yes. I mean, we surely expect the needle coke prices to go up. I mean, obviously, there is a huge shortage. On the electrode side, we are, as I said, I mean, we have still not even started going into the market for the January-March quarter, so we'll have to wait and see.
Right, sir. Understood. Thank you so much, sir, and congrats once again, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Paul Drugari from Bank of America. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, and thanks for hosting the call. Quick question, let's carry on. I want to talk a little more on the graphite electrode pricing trend. If I look at the Q-on-Q increase, it was up over the prior quarter, at least to my numbers, but by a relatively modest amount, just a few $100s per ton. Could you comment on why we're seeing the rate decrease and potentially flatlining through the summer? Is this a seasonal effect, do you think, or the greater needle coke allowing more output? So if you could comment on the trend on electrode prices during the last quarter. And also, we're now nearly halfway through the current quarter. What are you seeing in terms of pricing right now versus where we were, say, 2-3 months ago? Thank you.
You see, we, as a policy, we don't go into the specifics on the pricing and the cost. And as I just responded to our previous question, we don't see any let up on the demand. The demand continues to be very strong. And at least in this quarter, for which we know what the prices are, we know where we stand as of now in terms of values and in terms of quantities and the numbers, they look pretty strong. And as I said, in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we will know exactly where we stand with regards to the needle coke prices for January-March. And as you know, there's a time lag in this particular product where the production cycle is fairly long. So as far as the Q1 is concerned, January-March 2019 is concerned, you will not see any impact on the needle coke side because all the coke which is going to come between now and December will see us through until Q1. So whatever price increase takes place from January onwards will only be seen in the quarter of April, May, June. And as I said, we have still not opened our order books for that period. So we'll see what happens in terms of needle coke price and if we are able to pass on everything or maybe a little more or maybe a little less.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Jiten Savla from Vichos. Please go ahead. Jiten Savla, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead with your question. We can hear you, sir. You can go ahead, please. Mr. Savla, can you please go ahead with your question? As there is no response from the line of current participant, we move to the next question. That is from the line of Rohan Shah from Harsh Capital. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Sir, I would like to talk about what big raw material required, so which is coal tar pitch, I guess. So I wanted to understand about this raw material requirement of ours. I've read that about 40% of a graphite electrode is made through coal tar pitch. So I just wanted to know that the pricing of coal tar pitch has also increased or what has been happening in the market.
Yes, what you are saying is right. We have two major raw materials in our mixing process. One is CPC and the other one is coal tar pitch. And the ratio could be different between different companies. So 25, 30, whatever based on each company's specs is what people use. Now, in terms of price trend of coal tar pitch, you are right. There has been shortage of carbon material in the entire year of 2018-19, and we saw a jump in prices of coal tar pitch as well. So if we compare 17-18 with 18-19, coal tar pitch is at least 2.5 to 3 times of what it was in 17-18.
Okay, sir. So will it affect our EBITDA margins going forward, and by how much can it affect in that proportion?
See, EBITDA margin is more governed by definitely the sale prices as well as the cost of raw material or major raw material. So if the sale prices increase are more than the cost of raw material price increase, we are able to maintain or at least improve on the EBITDA margin.
Okay, all right. That's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sanjay Jain from Motilal Oswal. Please go ahead. Sanjay Jain from Motilal Oswal, please go ahead with your question.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, now my question is regarding utilization of our cash flows. So, about some time ago we had met and said that you have some working with consultant to figure out the business plans. So it's been quite some time. So any update on that?
No, we are on track. As I just said, our policy in the last 10-15 years has been fairly consistent in terms of payout. So we will maintain that ratio of about 35%. And in that context, the first step has been taken. We have just announced the interim dividend of 300%. Secondly, as I just mentioned, we are more or less at the last stages of finalizing our expansion from 80 to 100,000 tons. So it's a matter of a couple of months probably before which we make a formal announcement. And thirdly, on something related to carbon, again, anything new takes time, and we don't want to rush into that decision, but things are happening as we speak, and we are pursuing a couple of areas which are not very large compared to the cash flows that we are talking about.